Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.
Hello everybody and welcome to Future Hacker. I'm your host, Maria Taide, and today we're talking to a woman that has such an amazing story. She's a fighter, went literally through a roller coaster in her life, going from the top as a commander in the Coast Guard, where her demographic represented 0.1%, to losing everything and almost her life, and starting a brand new, more truthful and successful life from scratch. Christy Rutherford is now an advisor to executive leaders and businesses, a keynote speaker, and an author. She published 5 #1 best-selling books on Amazon in 8 months. Hi, Christy. It's so amazing to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks so much, Maria, for having me. I'm excited to share with the audience.
We are also super excited to have you. So, Christy, your company, Vision Finder, assists mentors and leadership teams to achieve the results they desire. May it be going through turbulent times, growing within their company, finding better jobs, building the teams. So could you please share with us your background, how you got where you are today, and your mission in life?
Oh, definitely. Thanks so much for asking. My career was in crisis management and maritime crisis management. And so my gift was creating high-performing teams and mentoring 90 junior leaders to success. So coaching and office politics was just a part of who I was. And so after I left my career, I started to look back and smell the roses, because this is a challenge that leaders have. We're always on to the next fire or the next challenge. We never look back to see what we created. And I saw that I created all of these rock stars because I remember who they were when I got them. And so I ended up talking to them to try to figure out, what did I do differently? And that's what I teach. So coaching and mentoring, that's just a part of who I am. I just had to learn how to monetize it. So my goal right now is to get 10,000 women promoted and raises by 2025.
That's an amazing, amazing goal to have, Christy. But I told our listeners that you went to this roller coaster. Could you tell us what happened with you?
I was doing too much. I was not only doing my job, which is the hard job. I wanted all the hard jobs, the competitive jobs that would keep me in alignment with promotion. And then I'm mentoring 90 people outside of my office because I wanted to change the demographics for African Americans, getting it to what's the equivalent of the C-suite, which 6 made it this year, which was the largest number. But that pipeline started 13 years ago. So it took 13 years to build this pipeline of qualified people to be able to play the game. So I'm working endlessly, 80 hours a week, proving people wrong. I had 160 people working for me in a very stressful and high impact job. My job is crisis management. So there's a fire every day to put out. I'm mentoring 90 people. I'm doing all kinds of things, all the extra projects. And I was making, Maria, a lot of the same mistakes that women make. We think that if we do more, then we'll get promoted. And the men are doing 20% of what we're doing, but we're creating our own chaos. And through a series of events, I resigned in 2012 with 3.5 years left to retire with a full pension. I would have died within the year, so I had to leave.
It's so good that you're sharing your story, because I know that there's so many women that are on the same place that you were. And by sharing that, we need to stop. We need to think about everything that is going on around us, right? And see what's worth and how we can actually get there to a more balanced life. And needless to say, it's such a trending topic, as companies, they have never been under so much pressure for being more inclusive, right? Not only to women, to diversity in general, also regarding equal pay. So there's a lot of discussions around giving women the flexibility we need to be able to focus on our professional life, also educating men around those bad practices of not giving women a voice. But what I like about your speech, that it's different. So you say women should be chasing it themselves instead of expecting the work to change around them. So we should be the protagonist. We should be the actor of change. So is that right? And how can we actually do that when we are immersed in adverse environments?
For me, and the way that I see it, Maria, we are creating the adverse environments. Are we in places where we're not appreciated and undervalued? Yes. But why do we stay in places that we are unappreciated and undervalued? And a lot of times when I look at the McKinsey report or a Bain study or the Bloomberg article, everybody is telling men what to do and organizations what to do. But nothing has changed, Maria, for women in the past 20 years. So always expecting that someone else should treat us better or educating men on how to treat women. And we give no thought and no consideration to what we could do ourselves. I knew that I was working myself into the ground. I knew that I was working 3 times as hard as the men that were around me, and we're making the same amount of money. So what's the point of I'm going home every day with smoke coming out of my head and I'm not building the proper relationships and I'm not doing what I need to do? Granted, I did move forward, but I was creating the grind. So what I teach women and what I teach my clients is at this level of leadership, you don't need to do more to get to the next level. You actually need to do less because we're tired, we're stressed out, we're bitter, we're resentful, or passive aggressive. And so, yeah, the doors are not opening to us because men don't want to be around a bunch of bitter women. And I will say that from the mountaintop. And once women get their health in order, they get their peace in order, they get their mental and physical health in order, and they get their houses in order, doors actually open for them to get to the next level because now they can manage themselves in the next level of leadership.
I completely relate to that, Christy. I definitely have been that road myself as well. You mentioned that the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So we always hear how women are underpaid and not given a chance and overloaded, and it becomes this reality in our own lives. At the same time, some beliefs, they are so rooted that we both, men and women, we're playing against ourselves without even noticing it most of the time. I never forget that day that a Harvard professor, Linda Hill, told us that at some point of this MBA course they changed the names of the protagonists of their leadership cases. And just that was enough for people to give a lower evaluation just because it was a female leader. And those evaluations, they come from, again, both men and women. I also heard from many women how they prefer to have a male boss. So doesn't it sound like a losing game from start?
I think it's only a losing game if we make it one. Now, there are a million layers when it comes to the question and the challenges and how we got here. And I think about the conversation that I had with my niece's mom. She's 3 and she has this kitchen set. You know, girls, the big toys is the kitchen set, it's the stove. She has like a mop and broom set, a doll, a table, all of this food. So when I go, all she wants to do is cook for me. And I told her, Mom, you're making this baby a people pleaser. Because she wants to cook and, Aunt Christy, what do you want? Well, I want a strawberry or I want a waffle. And so she's pretending to make all these things to be pleasing to me. So we're conditioned, Maria, at the very ripe ages of 2 and 3, and she's cooking while holding her baby. So it goes long before we even enter the workforce. And another part of what we just talked about was if everybody is beating the drum that women aren't going to get ahead, women have all these challenges, there is the gender wage gap. Bloomberg released an article recently about the pink recession. I've never been in a room with a bunch of men and hear them sit around and talk about all the challenges that they have. Men are always looking forward. But whenever I'm in a room at a women's event, they're always looking backwards and they're always talking about the hole in the donut. They're never talking about the donut. They're never really sharing how to get ahead. They mostly talk about all the challenges that women are having. And by the time you do talk about how to get ahead, it's 20% of the program, but we're drowning in misery that we never even get to that.
Wow, that's really something we have to stop and think about. I'm so glad you're sharing that, Christy. As you just mentioned, women like talking about all the challenging things and what's hard. We're also full of all those bad corporate practices around racial and gender inclusion in companies. So could you please share with us some good cases of companies that are able to implement a more inclusive culture?
I don't know if I've seen a company get it right. So let me think. Because if I call a company out, I'm going to make some people mad. But when I think about one huge company in general, And I listened to the CEO talk about diversity, and he really believes that his people are implementing the stuff that he has. I mean, and he believes in it and he loves it and he's passionate, because I can tell whether or not somebody is full of it when I'm listening to him. But the challenge is it has not trickled all the way down in the corporation. Does that make sense? And so one of the things that we've learned at Harvard when it comes to cultural issues in an organization is that the CEO can't just stop at the one layer down. He has to be able to penetrate 15, 20 layers down in the organization to make sure that something changes. But the problem that I see, Maria, is women are dying of autoimmune diseases and high blood pressure and heart attacks and strokes, waiting for somebody else to change as opposed to taking control themselves. So for me, I had a super toxic boss. I mean, in my 16-year career, I would have a bad boss who would almost burn me up for a year. And then I would have 2 years of a great boss, and then a bad boss, and then a great boss. And so it was a culmination of not being able to manage my stress, my rage, and my unforgiveness, and really my mental and my physical health. And so the last boss that came, my forest was already on fire by the time this toxic guy showed up. I was already on the way down before he showed up. And so he really just gave me permission to do the unthinkable, because nobody walks away from a good pension with 3.5 years left to retire. So I was waiting for somebody to manage him. I was waiting for the organization to squash this toxic leader. I was waiting for the leaders to have a conversation with this guy as he harassed me and really everybody in the office. And so it's one thing for me to be harassed, but it's another thing to watch him deteriorate the culture that we created, which was great. But we'll die waiting for somebody to do it, as opposed to taking charge ourselves and always knowing what our value is, Maria, and knowing that we have value to other organizations. If we can't capture that and capture being respected and treated fairly in one organization, we should be able to take our value and place it somewhere else where people are going to appreciate us and give us the culture that we desire and deserve.
That's such a very powerful message that you're giving women, Christy. And I wish that I have heard you like years ago. But, still there's time. And I really hope that, people are listening. We have women listening to this podcast. But, let's move on. We are future hackers. Somehow we have to talk about technology. So let's go into the technology piece. So the use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and algorithms, there's a challenge when it comes to fighting inequality, as those are all technologies fed from historical data and programmed by humans, meaning that future data projections could be biased as what our society is today. So how could we make technology an ally in building a more inclusive society? Saying, for example, we need more women in science, or we just need more women in tech. It just doesn't seem like a short-term solution to me, or, something that would be the answer. So do you have any thoughts on that, Christy?
Yeah, I think it's several things. One, I wish I had me. I wish I had this version of me 8 years ago. I would have gotten my money. But that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because we need to have this conversation. Now, when it comes to AI and algorithms, you and I have talked about it, but I also talked to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they talked about the people who are inputting the data are the white male millennials. So you don't have the people who are from Brazil represented, or the African Americans represented, or the Asians represented, right? So there are going to be a lot of challenges and biases. And so it's not just enough, as people say, we need more women in STEM. I think another challenge that needs to be addressed, Maria, is we need to prepare women for the challenges that they're going to experience once they get in STEM. So we're not told that when we choose a career path that's mostly a male-dominated environment, we're not ready. Does that make sense? We are unequipped to be able to manage ourselves, and the hostility and the sexual harassment and then the bullying and all of these things. So even if we do get a lot of women in STEM, if they're not prepared to manage themselves, then that work is fruitless. And what I am proud of as a part of the career that I had was I started mentoring women in 2001. Once I got my mentors, I didn't have my mentors until I started getting in trouble. So a couple of men called me and they became my mentors. And then they said, since we're mentoring you, you need to mentor these women. And so I taught them how to play office politics. I taught them how to navigate the men. I taught them that they should have a life. I taught them that, they say, well, Christy, I've checked 10 of these boxes and they're getting an advanced degree. I still have time left. What should I do? And I said, you should get a life. And so what's interesting is I could teach them that. And now that I look back, these women will achieve far more than I ever achieved, but they're not as miserable, unhealthy, and bitter as I was at my level. And they have a life and they have the kids and the spouse. I taught them something that was interesting as I look at it now, what I couldn't save myself from. And I know that I'm kind of getting off topic here, but as senior women, we know what we should be doing, but we're not doing it. But I think it's a part of not to overextend ourselves trying to save people without saving ourselves first.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, Christy. And going in this direction, right? You're mentioning how we should be getting women prepared psychologically and knowing how to deal with those environments and harassment. There's also the side that we somehow will have to get prepared for the future of the workforce. So we've been covering that a lot here at Future Hacker, how jobs are going to change. How, technology is advancing, current jobs will be automated. There's this McKinsey study that mentions that women will be even more affected as so many jobs that typically women do are going to be automated. There's this whole gap in qualification demanded by the new jobs. So at the end, it will always come down to the education, not only by our families, like the education we get at home, as you mentioned today, but we need to be more skilled, mobile, tech savvy, and we need to adapt to this new world of work. Do you think we're on the right path? Are we being inclusive early enough on the education? You mentioned as well we need more women in STEM. I think that there's this collective effort needed from families, government, private sector. So do you think we're on the right path?
When I think about some of the books that I've read of the challenges that have been around for hundreds of years, the framework is the same. Does that make sense? Like, there are no new problems in the world, just a repeat of old problems now, same script, different cast. And so there was, before coronavirus, there was a 68% talent gap, where 68% of CEOs were looking for top talent but couldn't find them. But then, Maria, I've talked to all of these women who are overqualified and undervalued in their organizations. These women are the talent gap. And so when I work with women and they get 30 and 40% raises in less than 2 months, that's the 30 to 40% gender wage gap. Does that make sense? Simply by teaching them how to ask. And so when I listen to data that always talks about women are going to lose, it's the drum that has been beaten for the past 100 years of women are going to lose, women are going to lose, women are going to lose. Now we're moving into AI and women are going to lose. So for me, it's what we believe. So women need to start to get clear on who they want to be and not allow data to drive their decisions and give them permission to stay where they are. And so there is so much untapped potential in the world of women if they would just give themselves permission to rise. Now, speaking to the men, the challenge with men is they don't see how some of the decisions that they make affect their daughters and their grandchildren. So I think if it can be brought back to them where if you place this unconsciously place this barrier for women, it is going to affect the women in your household. So will that give them permission to wake up and say, okay, well, if I make this decision and if we code this AI with all white men and you have 4 daughters in the house, how is this going to affect my kids? And I think that that's the only way, Maria, that we're going to get people to become conscious about the decisions that they make. I don't think that they're doing it intentional. I think it's just everybody's busy. A lot of these tech companies, they're running around crazy because they're looking for change and then they're under pressure from the venture capitals to get their money back. So if people can start to slow down just enough to become aware of why are we doing this? And the real question is, what are the unintended consequences of this decision that we're going to make right now? But that's asking people, and I'm not going to say it's an impossible task, but it's a tall order to say, hey, slow down enough to start to question why you're making this decision and what are the unintended consequences of creating this and what's going to happen. And now let's scale back and try to make sure that we are inclusive.
Yeah, I just love your message, Christy. At the end, it seems to me that no matter the technologies we have available today and we are going to have available in the future, making ourselves the actor of change and choosing wiser is one of the main paths to push companies to change their culture. So the big message is that, we do have a choice, as you say. We don't need to be playing this old, outdated, and stupid game we've been taught. And I think that the evolution of society is helping for sure, that the next generation is going to demand this higher responsibility from companies and government and everybody else. But the big question here is what we can do today to make sure we're moving to a more inclusive future. And clearly you are playing your role in helping us get into that. So we need more Christys as well. Thank you so much for being with us today, Christy. Do you have any final thoughts to share with our listeners? And also for those interested in knowing more about your work and then need your help and need to contact you, how can they find you?
Oh, definitely. Thanks so much for inviting me. One, the message is don't wait for somebody else to change. Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world. So you actually need to be what you're complaining about or what you're waiting for somebody else to change. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Two, take care of yourself because you only get this life in this physical body. So don't neglect your physical and your mental health. Waiting for somebody to come save you, you have everything that you need to save yourself. So if people want to get in touch with me, they can go to my website, ChristyRutherford.com. I actually have a free case study, how to pivot in your career and recession-proof your income without getting another degree. And you can get that at Change Now with Christy, CHRISTY.com. But everything that people need to know about me, YouTube channel, LinkedIn, I would love to be connected on LinkedIn, is on my website.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Christy. Thanks everybody for listening. This was Future Hacker.
Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.